All right, so today I have two really amazing guests today here with me on the podcast, Kim and Jake. They will introduce themselves in a second, but as always, we talk so much about physical fitness on this podcast, and we talk about nutrition and strength training and all the good stuff, but today is a great opportunity to talk about mental fitness. That's how I like to call it. And just recently, actually, I did an episode. It's number 253. So if anybody wants to check out my personal experience with breath work, which is something we're going to talk about today. So I talked a little bit about it there too. So please go ahead and check out that. And now we're going to hear from Kim and Jake, who are the facilitators for our breathwork classes here in Phoenix, Arizona. So why don't you guys go ahead and tell my audience who you are and what you do.
Thank you. Really appreciate the invitation to come on today and to talk about what we offer to the world. My name is Jake. I am the founder of Breath.Energy. I've been doing this for about 6 years, and it is a breathwork studio. As far as I know, we're the only dedicated breathwork studio in the country.
Wow. I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What about you, Kim?
Kim Richter. And I don't really do titles. I think that when we've done a title before, I think I ended up being queen of the charcuterie board. I think it's the one that always ends up. So I started helping Jake out with the studio probably about 2021. And through multiple things, we're now in our new studio.
Nice. Yes, it was a journey to get this studio. I remember that. But we made it work. You made it work. During the time. Okay, so tell us what is this thing, breathwork? Because I think a lot of people, they have heard this thing. They know that yes, there's this thing I have to slow down my breath, and people are aware about like parasympathetic breathing somewhat, to calm the nervous system. Is that what you're doing, or is what you're doing something different?
Yes, it is. It is all of those things. So breath work can take place at a lot of different levels. There are a lot of different types of breath work. Breath work is like saying I exercise, and it's like, well, are you lifting weights or are you running? Because those are both exercise, but they're still different things. That you can have a very deeply meditative experience while you're doing breath work. That would be one of the outcomes that you could experience. But breath work is essentially consciously controlling your breath. That if you're thinking about how you're breathing, that's part of breath work. The type of breath work that we do, we connect our breaths, so each breath is connected. And then the third aspect of breath work that we recognize is intention setting, that you have a goal, a desire, some outcome that you're looking for from breath work. And that when you put those three things together, that becomes a breathwork experience. And the type of breathwork that we're doing is the most reliable, consistent way to access your subconscious. That we all realize the majority of things that are going on in our life, we like to think it's our conscious mind that's controlling it, but it's really our subconscious that is. So that intention that we're setting is sending a signal from our conscious mind to our subconscious about how we would like our life to grow and develop and change from where it is today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So why don't you describe us what happens in a breathwork class, in a breathwork session?
Okay. I will let Kim take that one away, so I don't do all the talking today.
That's okay. So when somebody comes into the studio, we take our shoes off to the side and they find a mat. We have really great comfy mats available for each person with a pillow and a blanket. And they find the correct space that they feel is the best for them. And when we're ready to begin, we go around and set intentions. So however it is that we want to be showing up in our life, that's what we're going to be stating out as our intention. And then usually Jake guides most of the breathwork sessions, but everyone will lay down. We have the lights off, we light the candles, and whoever is guiding the breathwork usually guides for about 15 to 20 minutes. And just as different type of breathing, we'll do different tempos, just so then they know what their options are for when they then have their solo journey. And the solo journey lasts for probably about 45 minutes. And some of the breathwork classes will offer hape at the end of the class as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then when the class is over, we call everybody back and we'll have a little sharing circle at the end before they leave to go home.
Yes, yes. So actually, I want to come back to these like details a little bit more, but I'd also like to hear how you got into this and what has your own personal experience been with breathwork, and also are you actually, this is what I've been thinking to myself too. Are you also practicing somewhere else? Are you practicing while we are practicing? How does that work? And but maybe start from the beginning. How did you get into it?
Okay, those are all really good
Mm-hmm.
questions. I got into this, a friend had invited me to a breathwork experience. It was a holotropic breathwork experience specifically, and described all the benefits were coming for it. I was having some struggles in life that I would rather not be struggling with. Invited Kim to come to it. We went and did breathwork together, and we laid there for 2 hours and nothing happened. We just listened to some music and got done. We're like, yeah, that was cool. It was kind of relaxing, but it was certainly not the otherworldly experience that people had been promising. So there was part of that where I think they just really built it up. And then and then it just kind of under delivered. So we were underwhelmed. And then after that, I had a friend whose boyfriend was a breathwork facilitator here in Phoenix. And she was adamant that I come and try it. And I was like, I did it and nothing happened. Not interested in wasting another 2 hours of my life staring at the ceiling. And finally one day went and did it again, had an incredible experience. It was just incredibly emotional, incredibly mental. It was definitely a peak experience that you're in an elevated state of consciousness. And after that, I went and got Kim, said, hey, you got to come back and do this again. She's like, yeah, we did that. I was like, yeah, well, it's different this time. We need to do it. So she came and did it. Also had an incredible experience. That developed from basically we were doing it at a guy's house with like 10 people jammed into his living room. And I thought, well, there needs to be more people doing this. This is a really powerful experience. More people need to be involved. More people need to hear about this. He didn't have any interest in expanding really. So I just went ahead and I was like, well, I know how to market. I know how to do business. I've been doing breath work for a couple of years here. Let's do it. So we started our own thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and what was the thing that convinced you that, okay, I really want to get this out to the world? Was it like one thing? Was it this one specific time that you did it that you were like, I'm hooked, I'm going to do it?
It was in the middle of a breathwork experience. And in the middle of my breathwork experience, I saw like 60 people doing breathwork together. And that's kind of always been my overarching goal, if it were, or the vision that's been driving me is like, hey, we need to have 60 people doing breathwork together, like multiple times a week. That was kind of the vision that I had during breathwork. Came out of it was like, hey, we should do this. And everybody else was like, all right, whatever. I was like, well, I'm going to do this. So here we are.
Talk about getting messages during a breathwork session, right? Because a lot of people do get them. It's always so interesting to hear when we share after the class is over what we saw, what we experienced, and some of the things are really like really deep and mind-blowing. Wow.
And they're important too. When we've looked at studio spaces before, there would be certain places that we would absolutely love, and Jake would end up saying, no, it can't fit 60 people, so this isn't our place. So it's important too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So what about your own practice now? Do you do it? When do you do it?
So one of the first things that happened to me when I did breath work and I had that incredible experience, the first thing I said was, hey dude, what was the playlist? What was the music that was going along with that? And then he sent me like a screenshot of the songs. So I had to go back and build the playlist myself.
Okay.
And then laid down the next day and went to do breath work exactly as he described it, and huffed and puffed and basically was breathing like I was trying to blow up an inflatable raft for about 30 minutes and nothing happened. Like just laid there for 30 minutes, got done. I was like, I'm out of breath from breathing so hard. And for me, whenever I try to do breath work by myself, nothing happens. Like it's just it's a nada experience, an experience of nothing. And that the only time I do end up having an experience is when I'm doing it in a group. So there are a lot of times during our breathwork sessions that once we're done guiding you through breathwork, we'll lay down and join you for 10, 15, 20 minutes of our own personal breathwork. And one of the lines that we use a lot when we're introducing breathwork is that there is no right way, there is no wrong way to do breathwork. but there is more skillful and less skillful. And I am skillful enough at this point that at about 3 breaths, I am into my experience and I'm journeying. It doesn't take 10, 15, 20 minutes. It takes 3 and I'm going. So it's one of the benefits of doing this a lot is that you do become more skillful.
Yeah.
However, it does take me more than 3 breaths. I'm not that good about it.
Yeah. How long does it take you to get to the zone?
I would say probably about 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Yeah. Have
Which
you
is about
ever,
normal.
what's that?
That's about normal.
Right.
10
Right.
minutes.
I think it's still pretty fast. That for me at least, it really depends on the day too.
Mhm.
Sometimes you drop in and sometimes you don't until the very end, and
Mhm.
then you're there. Like my last week's experience was, I was kind of trying to force it. Like, Kirsten, you've done this since 2019. What's up with that? It's like, what's this stuff, right? Like, no, you can't. And I was actually lucky that my first experience, I think, was 2019 in Costa Rica. It was like the day before ayahuasca ceremony. It was like a primer, I guess.
Mhm.
It was fantastic. So I'm glad that my experience was good right from the beginning and very interesting, and I had a huge emotional release. So yeah, but I was going to ask you, have you ever practiced Wim Hof? Do you know what that's like, and have you done it? Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
So there are about 15 different types of breath work. The type of breath work that we do is called conscious connected breathing. We're not holotropic breath work because that's a trademark term. So that is Stanislav Grof does holotropic, but the effects are very similar. So that's all that to get back to Wim Hof does a type of breathing that's called Tumo breathing that comes from Buddhist monks. And it's a very Wim has the belief that if you heal the physical, that it will automatically heal the emotional and the mental. I see that differently than he does. I think if you heal the mental and the emotional, that much of the physical that is chronic will relieve itself. It's a very powerful type of breath work. It's really effective. It's really good. It's certainly helpful in helping people get into ice baths without having a shock or panic breathing response to it, which I did ice baths as an athlete for 20 years. And every time it was before Wim Hof existed. And every time I got in, you would think I was dying because I'm just like, until I finally relax and give into it.
CrossFit, and you still got this like
Yeah, but the Wim Hof allows you to get in without doing that panic breathing and to accept the coldness. So it's very effective. The people who have done Wim Hof before they come to Breath.energy, they have the most powerful experiences out of the box. That like they've been prepped, they've been trained, they've been prepared, and then the type of breath work just takes them to the next level. So I think it's an incredible type of breath work. I think everybody should try it. They should work it into one of the great things about Wim Hof is you can do it alone at home, alone by yourself, and it's just as effective as doing it with a group.
Yeah, and I think it can also be a nice introduction if somebody wants to come and try a longer breathwork class. When you've done Wim Hof before, it's like, okay, I know how it works, but it's just a lot longer. And because it's longer, it gets deeper. It definitely gets deeper because I think I practiced it for a long time too myself. And it was, I think it's like 3 rounds of like 30 breaths in the suspension. But he's like, go to 4 if you want to. I mean, you can do more, but in general, it's relatively short, right?
It's one of the things I love about Wim and almost all breathwork facilitators. We're terrible counters. So if you ever do a course with Kim, it's like, or with Wim, it's like, all right, inhale 12, exhale 15, like inhale 18. You're like, what? And then like 9, you're like, what number system are we using here? So his system is usually somewhere between 21 and 30 big full breaths, and then do a breath suspension, which is where you exhale your breath all the way and then don't take a breath in. And while you're breathing, it is lowering your CO2 levels because we're exhaling harder than we're used to. So it brings your CO2 levels down your blood. And then once you exhale and hold, it starts gradually building that CO2 back up, which just creates an incredible experience.
Okay, that was actually my next question. What is it that creates this experience? It can feel like out of body sometimes. You could like see colors, patterns. You can go back to places or into future. What does that?
So I've given you kind of the physiological answer that a lot of times people will talk about, oh, it's saturating you with oxygen. And that is virtually impossible. That if you take one of those pulsometers and put it on your finger, that at any given moment of any given day, your oxygen levels in your blood are somewhere between 95 and 97% saturated with oxygen. So if you're already at 97%, despite everybody's, I'm going to give it 110% effort, your blood is not going to go to 110% oxygen. Like there's 100% is a true 100% physical limit, and it's not going to go over that. What breath work does is it manipulates the carbon dioxide levels, and that it's going to reduce the carbon dioxide that's in your blood. And that's going to create some physical effects in your body. It can be tetany, it can be different things. There's a protein response and how it attaches to the red blood cells once those CO2 comes down. That's one of the things that causes tetany, is if you have a potassium, like if you are slightly low in potassium, you are more likely to have a tetany response. So that is all the physiological, we can prove this responses. Then there is the other side of it. There's certainly something going on with the blood-brain barrier. And one of the thoughts is that when our breath becomes connected, that our lungs start creating DMT within our lungs just naturally. So there can be a very similar experience to a DMT experience. And that is one of the thoughts, is that we know physiologically that humans can create DMT in their lungs, that newborns, when they are newborn, for the first 2 weeks, one of the reasons they're so blissed out is because they're having a DMT experience the entire time. That like they've done the studies on newborns' lungs and go, there's DMT in there, and then after 2 weeks, it tends to dissipate. So we know that we have some level of ability to create that. Now, whether that is true in science, there are no studies to prove that. But it's just, this looks like that is what it looks like is happening.
Yeah, I guess that's the effect that Wim calls getting high on your own supply. He uses that a lot. That's kind of what it can feel like, depending on, and not every experience is the same, but a lot of times it does feel this way.
Right.
And it can be very much like emotionally, like, release some stuff. I remember one of the times when I did, I got a private yoga class from one of my friends. She's an instructor, and she said after the class, she's like, I don't know, it looks like you need something else. Do you want to breathe at all? And at that time, I wasn't really practicing anything like this. And I was like, breathe? Okay, I guess we can. And then we did a little bit of this like alternate nostril thing and a couple of other things that she took me through. And I was kind of in a hard place in my life, and I just started crying. I was like, what the heck is that? Like, how is this possible? And of course I got worried, like, oh my God, do you have to go home? And I'm crying here now, like this already, and do you want to leave? And she's like, shut up and just be, I'm gonna be here with you as long as you need to. But it was really amazing, like what it did. Just like, it's like some heavy weight was lifted from the chest, and it's kind of like you're melting to the floor. It was a really, really amazing experience. And actually also why I wanted to do this interview with you is like a lot of the people in my audience are definitely very driven, very task and detail oriented, at the same time stressed. So is that the perfect person who should try breathwork?
I'm gonna back up and talk about the crying for a second, and then I'll talk about the type A people that you work with. So not my first breath work, the first one that worked, that was a beautiful, wonderful, gorgeous experience, and I was like, man, I definitely got to come back and do this again next week. Came back and did it the next week, and had like a 2-hour ugly cry, like snot bubble crying, just like, this isn't a gorgeous let's shoot a movie cry. This is like, whoa, this is some ugly crying going on over here. And when it was done, and then we sit up and have a little sharing circle at the end, I just took like a bottle of water and dumped it over my head so that nobody could tell I'd been crying for 2 hours. Like they wouldn't be able to look at my bloodshot red eyes and the wetness all over, and the wailing that had been taking place. Like, oh no, we can't figure out who it is at all. Like, good job camouflaging that. So I've been there. It can be very emotional. When it comes to the the driven high performers, high achievers, people who have a need to get things done, breath work is perfect for them. And it's perfect for them for a couple of reasons. That the most productive that you've ever been, the best you've ever performed athletically, the best that you've ever performed in a business sense is when you're loose. That you have to get loose first, and then once you're loose, then you can really move, then you can really achieve. Like the worst coaches I've ever seen is like someone's getting ready to go out the field and the coach reminds them how much is on the line, and it's like, wow, that is like the worst coaching possible. Like, hey, the whole game's riding on this kid, and it's like, oh wow, yeah, let's make them all uptight and tense. Yeah, like, oh, no, I hope I make it. That like once you can release, once you can relax, then you can get in a state of flow and everything comes easy and you can perform at your best self. So that's kind of my sales pitch to high performers, is that you'll be able to perform better without grinding so many gears, without it being so terrible, without it being so tough. That like it doesn't need to be a grind. And I've got the good fortune of working with some people who are like super affluent, like their net worth starts with a B. They're billionaires with a B. And the hustle culture is a very middle class mindset. Rich people don't hustle. Middle class people hustle. And that to become truly affluent, to become truly wealthy, and to be able to execute at a high level, it takes a level of relaxation and letting go. And I think breath work can help that a lot.
That's so awesome what you just said. Like you have to relax more, and that, I mean, of course you have to work, but
Correct. Yeah.
to let things come to you instead of like forcing them to you.
Well, it's one of the anomalies, or one of the paradoxes of life,
Right.
is that a flow state is no effort, but it's also 100% effort. That when you are in a state of flow, you are 100% involved, you are 100% dedicated, that you are probably working as hard as it is humanly possible for you to go.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't take any effort at all.
Yeah, because you truly enjoy it, and it's light and there's ease in it. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of people have tried, because we have stress and stuff, like journaling and meditating and yoga, and all of which can be very helpful, I think. So how is breath work and its effects different?
So there are some aspects of stress that are not conscious. That when you're in, for me, when you're in the line at Starbucks and the person is refusing to move up and everything is going slower than it should be going because the person in front of you is executing poorly, I would like to tell myself, like, I am the Buddha, I am calm, I am patient, this isn't bothering me at all. But no matter how much I tell myself that doesn't bother me, it bothers me. Like there is something going on in my gut, in my stomach, where if I'm just like sitting there going namaste, it's not going to fix that. And we all have those stresses in our life that we care about, things that we can consciously say, this doesn't bother me. But then subconsciously, it does tremendously. So there are things that we need to do consciously to address those things. But then what breath work is doing is getting to the subconscious, like what is the root that is causing this anxiety in you? And how do we address that, the root of what that anxiety, that stress is, so that it's not coming up at such an intense level for you.
Yeah. And have you experienced this in your lives too, since starting breath work? This very effect?
Yes. Yeah. Quite a bit. Before I started breath work, I was a fairly angry person. And there's a joke among Kim and I that she went out with some friends one night for dinner, and they're like, hey, are you still dating that angry guy? And she was like, yeah, I'm still dating that angry guy. And is he still angry? And she's like, no, he isn't angry anymore.
Yeah.
And she came home and was like all happy to tell me, like, hey, do you know you're not angry anymore? And I was like, yeah, it's been 2 years since I've been angry. And she's like, what? I'm like, yeah, thanks for Thanks for noticing. Been a little 2-year lag between last time I was angry and today, but thanks for coming along. So yeah, I think there's that isn't to say that there aren't still things that annoy me, because there are things that come up where you're like, what are we doing here? Like, what's going on? Why are we executing so poorly at life? And but I certainly don't have the intensity of the response to that I have in the past.
Yeah, that's definitely, I feel the same way. It's almost like, yeah, it's not worth it, to get really upset. Of course, sometimes, like you said, you do because you're human, but it's not as sharp maybe anymore.
Right. Well, there's righteous anger. There's like, hey, is this person just being rude to me and I'm upset because this is assaulting my pride, or am I upset because somebody is being harmed for no good reason, that there's an unjust pain being experienced here, and I need to do something about that. Like, that would be a righteous anger, like, hey, I need to step in and protect this person. That does motivate you. And I think Kim has a story of one of our clients this week who had just noticed about breath work helping her with something that used to bother her.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. After breathwork in the share, she was stating how she realized that things don't bother her as much as they used to. And her roommate was going on and on and on the other day about something that their neighbor always does. And this woman was really calm about it and was like, yeah, okay. And the roommate kept talking about it. And she goes, but I know the neighbor's doing that. It's the expectation. I know it's going to happen. I'm not going to attach any emotion to it. It just is what it is. And so that inner peace that she has found, and so that's why she's so incredibly grateful for breathwork, because she's coming once a week for probably 2 months. And so she's really noticed the change in her life from it.
And in the past, she said that she would have been just as upset as a roommate was, that it had been an opportunity for them to both kvetch about it at length. And instead, she was just like, hey, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's very cool. And I think the more you do it, the more you get that effect. It's not from just like, I think after the first one, you can be like blown away. Oh my God, all this happened. It was so cool. I think it's like amazing. But to start feeling the real impact of it, it comes kind of the more you practice. And if you, just like with anything else, with more consistency, it gets better. At least my experience.
That kind of breath work is a lot like lifting weights or working out or training, that if you come once, it's an incredible experience. I'm sure if somebody has never worked out before and they'd go doing one go do one, workout session, it feels almost like a health event. Like, wow, I'm out of breath, I'm sweaty, everything hurts. But if you do it consistently, there's growth and improvement in your life. And the same thing happens with breath work, that over time, there's not like, oh, I did one workout and this workout is what made me strong, this workout made me fast. It's the consistency over time, that like day one, like there's no workout between day 1 and day 90 where you go, that workout made the difference. But over the course of time, when you get to day 90, you look back and go, oh, I'm different. How'd that happen?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really good for the audience to know, because they understand how working out works, but this is the same thing, exactly the same thing. Yeah. I would like to go back to the breathwork class. Okay, so we talked about setting intentions in the beginning. Can you tell a bit more? What is an intention, what it isn't, how to do it right, and then how do we then breathe? Because you said 45 minutes on our own, and there's a little intro portion before that. How do we breathe? Is there a pattern? Is there a certain way to do it?
I'll let Kim talk about the intentions.
I knew that was coming. So we always try to tell people that we want to set our attention from a positive present tense. And intentions are something that we can do every time we do breath work, but it's also something that you can do to open up your day. Some people meditate in the beginning of the day. That's how they started off. They do their routine. And a lot of times you can set an intention for the entire day of what you want to have happen and how you want to show up in life. So as much as we all struggle with people in our lives, we can't change them at all. So the intention isn't, I want so and so to be less cranky. It's how do we want to show up in life, and how do we want to be better for ourselves and the people around us. So our intentions for breathwork, we can set as many as we want. We can get really detailed and from a positive present tense. So if the example that we use, I don't want to be angry, which is a great first step, but that word that you're going to be using is exactly what you're getting back from the universe. So instead it's, I'm grateful that I'm
Calm.
Mhm.
I'm grateful I'm at ease.
Mhm.
You know, one of the things that we're doing with intentions is, and this would be great for your audience, is that I know for me, when I started this journey, what I really wanted was I wanted to be able to achieve my full potential. And my full potential was up here, and my actual delivery was down here. And this gap in between of where we are and where we would like to be, that's what we're setting intentions for. That we're saying, my life is this way right now. That's not how I want my life to be. I would like my life to be, I would like to show up at my full capacity, that I'm not going to be different, but I need to be fully me. And that you can set an intention that helps you close that gap. And that's kind of why we set it as a present tense, that it's not, I don't want to be my full potential someday in the future. I have all this potential right now, and I want to execute on that right now in this moment, to have the full gifts and talents that I have available to me to be able to use and to execute on those, and to show up fully as myself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great, because I think people often say I'm grateful for, and they think about just like what they actually have right now. Like, I should be grateful for my family and that stuff. Yes, of course you should, and you are, but what you're saying is different, right? Like,
Well, yes.
I
yeah.
feel we should also do that. I did a gratitude journal for about a year, and every night before bed, I would write down 3 things that I was grateful for in the day. I feel like that's amazing, but just different than what we're doing with our intention.
Well, it's one of the things where, to try and help negate that about them just saying what it is they're grateful for, that sometimes people come in and they'll say, I'm grateful that I'm here, or I'm grateful that my friend invited me to this class. So I've started saying, hey, unless you've recently had a near-death experience,
Mhm.
being grateful for just being here, not an intention. Like, you've got a real issue in your life that you need to address. And fortunately or unfortunately, we actually have a girl that's coming to breathwork now who did recently have a near-death experience. So
Really?
it's like, all right, well, stepping on my joke there.
Right.
I know she's raising her hand.
Hello, can I make that intention? Yes, just you. Just you can do that.
Yeah.
Rest of you have not recently almost died. So let's focus on a real problem in your life.
Right. Yes. And everybody asks them. It can't be like, I can't come up with anything. Come on now. We all have
Mhm.
stuff. Who wouldn't have stuff? I don't think there's anybody who's like,
Well,
Right.
that's why the rest of the joke is like, unless you've recently won the lottery and every relationship in your life is perfect and everything's going great, probably have an intention there. One of the things that I don't cover in class, but I have in written form, is that, like, I would like you to be super specific when you set intention. Like, there's an intention of, hey, I would like to be abundant. It's like, all right, what's abundance look like?
right.
That's like going up to the deli counter and going, 1 sandwich, please. And it's like, all right, ham, like, what do you want? There's a lot of sandwiches out there that you could have, kid. Which sandwich do you want? So, like, be specific about what it is you're asking for. Like, you don't necessarily need to be that vulnerable with us and tell us exactly what it is you're looking for, but you need to know, like, hey, what does, I'm involved in a new business venture, and we haven't actually launched anything yet. And for the last 2 weeks, all I've been trying to do is, let's define what success looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we're going to succeed at this, what does winning actually look like? To a very granular level. Like, hey, you're going to do this, I'm going to do this. These are the outcomes that we're looking for. These are the metrics that we're looking at.
Yeah.
And you can do the same thing in your life of, what would success look like tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm often shocked at how often people don't have the mildest clue of what success would look like in their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just reading, or actually listening to the book Awareness. Do you know?
Anthony DeMello?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So he talks about walking through the life in your sleep. And that's what
Mhm.
it's kind of like. You don't define anything. You just go through your days, and they're all the
Mhm.
same. And because you haven't really, it's almost like you don't want to wake up. I think
Mhm.
that's also true. And
Well, that's part of setting intentions, is that, like, what is the purpose? What is the meaning? What is it you're trying to accomplish in your life? And most people never consciously make that decision. And if you haven't consciously made that decision, that means somebody else has made that decision and you're just acting out theirs. that I know what my purpose is. I know what my values are. I know what I'm trying to accomplish. And if you don't, I'll recruit you for that. And that's what happens with most people that run companies. They're just recruiting people to help them execute on their vision because they don't have one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. And some people are very happy in this position. They want to do stuff for somebody else. And that's
Right.
if that's what they desire, that's cool, but they have to desire that.
If that's what they desire, but are they consciously saying, this is, I want to help support your vision?
Probably not very often. I don't know, but I have seen that's not often the case.
It is that like, if somebody comes to you as a trainer and they go, I just want to be more fit. It's like, well, what is more fit? That's not a thing. It's like, hey, do we have a weight in mind? Do we have a body percentage in mind? Do we have some measurements? Like what are the metrics that we're shooting for here so that we know when we're there?
Yeah. Oh, it's very true. I often hear, I want to feel good in my body. So how does it, what does it feel like exactly? Right.
Right.
It's like you want to go up the stairs and not be out of breath. Is that it? Or is it like, I want to squat, I don't know, 200 pounds. Is that it? Like, what is it? Gotta get detailed. Yeah. Okay. So from intentions, then we breathe. How do we breathe?
So the type of breath work that we do is called conscious connected breathing. And we call it that because you're just going to consciously think about your breath. The majority of the time that you're breathing, you don't have to think about it, which is a good thing. But breath can be both conscious and unconscious. There's a lot of breath work facilitators out there that like to go, breath is the only thing that's conscious and unconscious that we control. And then I blink at them and I'm like, is it now? That's the only one that we can move back and forth between. But when we take our breath from unconscious to conscious, it's also taking our mind from our conscious to unconscious, that it's allowing us to access that subconscious level of our mind, that we're taking something from the darkness into the light. So that's what we're doing when we consciously think about our breath. And then we're going to connect our breath. So most of the time that we breathe, we inhale and then we exhale and then we pause at the end of that exhale. That's usually when we cough, swallow, sneeze, whatever we do. But even if we don't have to do anything at the end of our breath, we just have a momentary pause there. And all we're doing with our breath work is removing that pause so that one breath just cycles smoothly into the next. So it's like a circle that never stops spinning. Like one inhale is half the circle, the exhale is the other half of the circle, and it never stops. Or it's like a wave that's going up and down and up and down, that a wave never has a pause or a stop in the middle. It just smoothly transitions into the next cycle. And that's what we're doing with the breath. And the more skillful that you can be about connecting those breaths, I think that's what really helps. What makes your breath work experience more skillful, that when we inhale, we do it very intentionally. We use a lot of effort and we're trying to breathe into our diaphragm and our hips and fill ourselves up from the bottom. And then when we exhale, we just relax and let go. And if you just relax and let go when you're exhaling, it can be difficult to tell when the breath ends. So there's a point at the bottom. It's like, am I done exhaling or am I not done exhaling? All right, well, I'm just going to go ahead and inhale. So you're just linking those breaths together. And that's really what we're doing with the breath.
Yeah. And the breathing is pretty intense, I would say, right? You just go in and out, and I think it's pretty intense for me, at least. That's how I do it.
It can be. So we give people a number of tempos that they can breathe at. That your breath is going to match your life is going to match your breath. So in all of the breath, if you do much studying in breath work, all the different systems, all the different styles of breath work are going to come back to that 5.5 seconds is the first perfect tempo for breathing. It's 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out. Now, for most people, that is a very long breath. Most people in American society are probably breathing somewhere in the 2-second range. That it's fairly quick, fairly shallow. So if you're doing a 5.5 second breath, it's going to be a big, deep, full breath, and then it's going to be a long, slow exhale. Now, in our day-to-day lives, Kim is much quicker than me. We call her the hummingbird because she's just like zoom, 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 all over the place. And I'm more like a tractor, a little bit slower, a little bit steadier, just kind of plodding along. So when we do our breaths, when we're guiding, Kim is constantly inhale, out, exhale, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, because that's how she likes to breathe.
Yeah.
And after about 4 breaths like that, I'm like, oh, time out. I can't breathe that fast. So when I guide you through breath work, there's one where I'm doing a really long, really slow, really drawn out breath. And it's about 7 seconds in and about 7 seconds out. And that's how I prefer to breathe. So the tempo of your breath is determined by your mindset, by how you're showing up in life. So we take you through a couple different tempos for how fast you're going to breathe. That's the tempo. Now we are trying to make your breaths as deep as possible without overextending you, that it should be a full, deep, committed breath, but it should be challenging, but not difficult.
Okay.
So it should be a little deeper than you're used to.
Definitely.
Probably a little faster than you're used to,
Yeah.
but you shouldn't be breathing like you're trying to start a fire or something. That's not what we're doing.
Right. But also not casual everyday breathing. It's way different.
It's definitely not casual everyday breathing. It's very intentional. It's very deep. You know, one of the biggest differences is like when we ask you to breathe into your hips and your diaphragm, most people, especially people that are experiencing stress, are breathing into their chest.
Yeah.
So if we can just drop that breath down into their belly, one, that's immediately going to alleviate a lot of stress. And then two, it's automatically going to slow down a lot of their breathing, that it's difficult to breathe into your belly quickly.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's hard. At least for me, it is hard. And I think it's called breath work for a reason, right? It's not just breath chilling. It is actually work. And sometimes I find, like, honestly, like when our class like 7 p.m. in the evening, sometimes I'm really tired. I'm like, can I do this? Because it's work. It's not just like you're lying there. Although it's sometimes like, I just want to lie here, do nothing. But I also know the reward at the end. So it is work. It is, like you said, intentionally have to stick with it. And I think I think, Kim, you say sometimes in your introduction, like how you breathe is how you live, like how you live your life, right? The intention, like how intentional you are about it. So sometimes, honestly, just this one sentence has kind of put me back on the right mindset and be like, don't just come here to just sit around, right? You have to put in the work to get the benefit. So that's been helpful and useful for me. But yeah, it's work.
And that statement, it's a very quick statement that there's a lot to unpack in. So when we say or when she says like how you breathe is how you'll live, your breath will always match your life. Your life will always match your breath. That there is one way you breathe when you're happy. There's a different way you breathe when you're sad. There's a different way you breathe when you're stressed. And it is easier to change your breath to get your mood and state to change than it is to try and change your state and then have the breath follow. That it is an equation that works both ways, and that you can just, like, a big sigh is kind of like a chapter ending breath, that like if you want, hey, I'm done with this experience, you can just take a big sigh and emotionally it's going to be over, and then you can move on to the next thing.
Right. And also, if you want to get like all fired up for something, you can change that too, to the other way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think they even use it with Navy SEALs, that type of breathing where the inhale is longer than the exhale. They intentionally do that to pump them up for things.
They do that. Most of the Navy SEALs now, they're practicing a type of breath called box breathing, where there's four parts of the breath: inhale, hold, inhale after hold after you've inhaled, exhale, and then hold after you exhale. So that's the 4 sides of the breath, the hold on either side of it. And most of what they're doing is box breathing. And they use that to regulate their emotional state in stressful situations. Yeah,
it really is a great tool, and it's always available as long as we're around. Okay, so last part. Okay, so we did the intentions, we did the breathing, and then at the end we have the optional hape. Can you tell us a little bit more about hape too?
Take it away, Kim.
Hape is amazing. So hape is a shamanic snuff. They take mapacho, the oldest known tobacco, and they grind it up into a fine powder, and then they can mix it with other Amazonian power plants, and it creates different flavors of hape, different types, and they all do different things. So hape is a shamanic snuff. And so it's administered by one blow to each nostril. And it's a little difficult to say what's going to happen because just like every time you do breath work, it's a different experience. Every time you do hape, it's a unique experience, but it can be grounding, it can be cleansing, it can push you further into the work that you're doing with breath work. You might receive messages. It's different every single time. It burns like crazy, so it is an option. It's not something that you have to do if you come to a breathwork and hape class. But we highly recommend it because it's an amazing experience.
Yeah, it is definitely. But like if it's offered, you should definitely try it. It's great.
That said, Kim always like downplays how much it burns.
I do.
It burns a lot. Like she's like, it's not that bad. I'm like, yeah, it does. Yeah, it burns.
It does burn.
It
It does
burns.
lubricating.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
It took me years, plural, to really enjoy doing hape because it really does hold a mirror up to how we handle hardship in our lives. So I didn't really handle hardship very well for a minute there. So it took me a long time to really enjoy doing hape, but I love it now. So
she's really eager for everybody else to deal with their hardship now that she is. She's eager for you to address yours.
Yeah, the mirror thing is also so true what you said, because sometimes it can feel so strong that not actually anymore, I've done it quite a bit, but when I first started, it was like it's almost like you want to run away because this shit hurts. Right? This is like
almost want to run away, huh?
But you can't because
during Kim's first hape, she may have actually physically run away.
I did, however, because Jake didn't know it was when he first started administering hape, and he gave me a Jake dose, which is like 3 times the normal amount of like normal people.
That's not quite true. I took the dose that I take and cut it in half and thought that would be like, well, that's got to be like a normal person dose. Right. It was, it's 1.5 times. Normal.
I was crawling out of my skin. It was not a good situation.
I'm just surprised.
And I'm still entertained.
He does not administer hape like that anymore, though. So
no,
yeah. I don't know how you're able to run anywhere because I just can't move when things.
I did. I had to get away. I literally got up and ran and backed myself against a stairwell.
Yeah.
Aren't you super dizzy?
I didn't care. I just had to move somewhere.
Oh, okay.
She was deeply upset.
Deeply upset. What did you do? Yeah, no, it can be very profound. The first time when I had in your class, Ben served it, and he was very kind because this was the biggest dose I've ever had. I had just a little bit of experience before that. And he was so kind because I immediately started crying, and he held my hands and sat there with me as long as I needed to cry and gave me a hug at the end of it. And I was like, this is so good because I don't know how I would have done it. Obviously, I would have, because if he left, whatever, what do you do, right? But he stayed there and he was kind of like taking care of me. And I was like, thank you so much. It was very sweet.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was good. Okay, so breathwork for local people in the Phoenix area. How can we do it and when? And then also tell us about the online class too.
Okay. They can find us online at our website, breath.energy. That's the whole thing. There's no .com. The name is the website. Website is the name. And we have physical classes 3 times a week, Monday and Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m. And then on Tuesdays from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Monday and Thursdays have hape. Tuesday does not. And then all of our classes are available online as well. So every time we're doing a physical class, we do have online classes that you can join through Zoom. And then we also offer one-on-one breathwork sessions as well for people who that doesn't fit their schedule, or they would just like more individual attention or to get more personalized approach when they get started.
Awesome.
There's also our 2 women's classes a month. Those will be on the schedule as well. Those are usually during the days. And then people can find us on Facebook or Instagram at Breath Energy Studio.
Right. Are the women's classes online too?
Or not right now. No? Usually the women want to show up in person. So I haven't really had the women ask for online quite yet, but maybe for future.
Yeah. So I think most of our listeners are like all over the States and even in other countries. So check out the online class. Definitely, it's awesome. Too bad you can't get a hape through that, but maybe you can buy your own hape and do it at the end of your class. That's a really good combination. All right, is there anything that we didn't talk about but you feel like it's important to mention?
I think that covers it. You did great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
thank
think
you.
that's
Very
great.
thorough. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, then thank you so much for chatting with me today. I think it was a great conversation, and I will actually see you in like 4.5 hours.
Perfect.
Beautiful. Looking forward to it.
All right. All right. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsten. You too.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Bye.